What's up and welcome back to the last Kind of Funny Indiana Jones in review. For now, as always, I am Tim Gettys, joined by Greg Miller.
I exist in the space between spaces.
Nick Scarpino.
It belongs in a museum.
Blessing.
Kindoffunny.com/questionable.
And Andy Cortez.
A good ass movie, man.
Okay, Andy. Can't wait to get
That's
into
the
this
energy
with
you're going to bring today, Andy.
Because this is Kind of Funny's in review. Each and every week, we rank and review two different movie franchises. This week, we are wrapping up Indiana Jones and Magic Mike, which means next week we are starting with some new stuff. We're actually going to be bringing back the one that started it all with the MCU in review. We're going to be doing an episode for WandaVision where we're going to rank and review the entire season of WandaVision against the other MCU Marvel Studios projects. Very exciting stuff. Of course, that'll be Friday when that comes out. But before then, we are going to begin a very long journey with Pixar in review. We're going to do this one a little bit differently than our other in reviews because it's so long, because there's like 20 movies. We've already done the Toy Story ones. We're going to go in, start ranking them, starting with Bug's Life against Toy Story. And Pixar will be in review series that when there are gaps in the schedule, that's when those things will be filled in. By the end of the year, we'll be done with all the Pixar ones for sure. But we just got a lot of good stuff coming up like Godzilla and Mortal Kombat, a lot of that HBO Max goodness going on. But that's so far away. Today, we are talking about Indiana Jones. You can watch this on youtube.com/kindafunny or roosterteeth.com. You can also get it as a podcast by searching for Kinda Funny Reviews. If you want to get the show ad-free, you can go to patreon.com/kindafunny where you can watch the show live as it's being recorded and be a Patreon producer like Graham of Legend, David Mintel, Al, the Predator Tribesman, Cassandra Ramirez, Spen McHale, James Davis, and the Nanobiologist. Today we're brought to you by MeUndies, but we'll tell you about that later. Let's get right into it. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, or as it was first titled, Indiana Jones and the Atomic Ants. Then later titled Indiana Jones.
There's some fucking aliens here.
And the Destroyer of Worlds, that they thought was too scary of a title. So they're like, nope, we're going with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. A runtime of 2 hours and 2 minutes, released on May 22nd, 2008, directed by Steven Spielberg, music by John Williams. This had a budget of $185 million, making it the most expensive movie ever directed by Steven Spielberg. A box office of $790.7 million, which I'm pretty shocked by. This did very well, becoming the franchise's highest grossing film, as well as the second highest grossing film of 2008. Do you guys want to guess what was above Indiana Jones?
In 2008.
Blessing nailed it. Number
Look
one was
at him
The
go.
Dark
Yeah,
Knight.
I was there.
You were
I was-
there.
I was a
Now,
sophomore in high school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Every once in a while.
What's
Go
up?
for it.
I was going to say, do you think when Steven Spielberg and George Lucas watched The Dark Knight, they were like, oh, you can iterate? You can actually like make new old stuff like different now? We didn't know that. Oh, well, I guess we'll just fucking rehash all the shit for the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. This movie's garbage.
They added new stuff. There's CG.
Lots of CG, Nick. Yeah, lots of CG.
So much.
It's called
CG.
lazy filmmaking, Greg. It's called.
Oh,
let's
yeah.
just
I don't,
put
when
some
you were
forest
handing out all
elements
your
back
Nick
there.
awards to the Mandalorian, I don't think I remember you calling them lazy for shooting in that weird dome, huh? Huh?
Wait,
Tough
when
guy?
did I hand? First off, what are Nick Awards and how do I get one? Can I hand myself one?
So Dark Knight was number one. Indiana Jones, the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was number two. The rest of the top 10 of the highest grossing movies in 2008 kind of surprised me. So do you guys have any guesses? 2008, top 10 box offices. What's number three?
Was there a Transformers that came out that year?
No Transformers. That was
Was there
2007
an
and
X-Men movie
2009.
that came out that year?
Unfortunately, there should have been a
No.
Transformers that came
Iron
out.
Man.
Iron Man coming in at number 8.
Wow.
Number eight
Wow.
on the
Fuck
list,
me.
Iron Man. Below Iron Man, Wall-E at number 9. And The
Wow.
Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian at number 10.
Rest
We
in
got
peace,
the
those
Chronic
movies.
of Narnia.
Then number 3, underneath Indiana Jones and the Kingdom Crystal Skull, Kung Fu Panda.
Hell
Oh,
yeah.
great film.
Oh, that's
great
good.
film.
That's a
Great
good
Number
trilogy
one.
right
4, Hancock.
Oh, let's
Oh,
go.
yeah.
Not a good
Let's
film.
Number
go. Love
5.
Hancock.
Got a
I
hand
can't
job
believe-
during the Hancock movie.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
No, you didn't. That didn't
That's a
sound
good
cool.
time.
I rented it. Oh,
Also, there was no one else in the room. It was just him doing it.
I wasn't in the theater.
Number 5 shocks me. Mamma Mia.
No,
that's a thing. Mamma
Would you
Mia
believe
was a
Mamma
thing, man.
Mia was one of the top
Tim,
10
do you know
highest
how
grossing
many
movies?
suburban
People love
moms
ABBA.
are out there? They all
Love
fucking
Mamma Mia, dude.
Yeah.
They love
Yeah,
it. They
come
love
on,
ABBA.
It reminds
I
them
know.
of Pasta Pazzoul. you
Magic
know?
Mike wasn't on the damn list.
Pasta
Okay, we're not gonna
has
compare Magic
Pazzoul.
Mike to Mamma Mia.
Yeah,
are we?
that's
Mamma Mia was
that's
a
a
Broadway
dirty
show.
stripper movie. All right,
Mamma
Mamma
Mia?
Mia is a fun little no
Magic-
Number 6 is Madagascar, and number 7 is James Bond: Quantum of Solace.
Madagascar didn't come out in 2008.
Madagascar escaped to Africa.
Okay, cool.
Now we got
Plus, is about to throw some goddamn.
No, I
hands.
was like, no, we're not gonna sit here and act like Madagascar came out in 2008. It came out in like 2004 or some shit. I was in elementary school. I remember.
Now,
it
real
vividly.
quick,
I was there.
I know we're making a polished podcast, but in the Patreon, patreon.com/kindafunny, you can watch the show too. Chance Carter said, "Fuck ABBA," all right? And I was like, oh man, that's a strong stance against ABBA. Then he follows up like 4 things down. ABBA and Mamma Mia ruined my life.
What?
I want to know that story.
Chance, I need you to tell that story so I can communicate it. Because I know that
What?
sounds like, you know, how Batman's parents were killed in an alley. Like, your
he one
family
of
has
the
died in the
18s?
way to see Mamma Mia.
So I've only seen Mamma Mia 2, and I watched it for the first time a few months ago. Good movie.
Wait, you jumped to the second one?
Yeah, my friends set me off. Like I was hanging out with the homie Yusef McGee, right?
know,
We're like,
I
let's
know.
have a small movie night. You know, we're gonna watch Mamma Mia. For some reason, I don't know why, but they were like, Mamma Mia 2 is the one to start with. And so I watched it, didn't understand a thing that was going on because Mamma
Yeah,
Mia
you
2
need
is not
context
seen-
to the first one. It's kind
if
of a
you've not
complex.
seen Mamma Mia 2, they go back and forth in time. And so you're like hanging out with, I guess, the mom as a kid, but then it fast forward
With the
to
Mamma Mia?
with Mamma Mia, yeah, and then fast forward to present day, and you're getting all of these age shifts and all this stuff that's going on. And if you have no idea who these characters are, it is impossible to follow. But I like the movie though; it was very good music.
Same less.
I remember when the
only
trailer
watched the
dropped.
second.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I remember when the trailer for the second one dropped, or maybe it was just an anime, and they were like, "It's been 10 years since Mamma Mia 1." I was like, "It's been fucking 10 years since the original Mamma Mia." That feels
Yeah,
like a
they
movie.
made
that
a-
It feels like
did
it came
not
out
come
in
out
the
that long
90s or some shit, you know?
Do you guys know they made a sequel to My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
Yeah.
Today we're
Big
talking
fat
about
fuck.
Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Andy, what did you think about this movie?
Oh man, this fucking movie. It's weird, right? I had never seen it before. Going into it, all I heard was about this goddamn nuclear bomb in the fridge, right? That's all I
Nuke the
knew,
fridge.
and I knew plenty about it, right? Going into it though, I thought it was gonna be kind of the what's it called the what's the film term for it?
MacGuffin.
Throwback.
I thought it was gonna be the MacGuffin of the movie. I thought every time I kept hearing about this fridge, I kept thinking like, oh, this has got to be a main plot beat, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna
Nope.
do something with it at the beginning of the movie, and then they're gonna realize, oh shit, that thing can do the thing at the end of the movie. Oh wow, it all comes full circle. So when this fucking when Indiana Jones gets launched 4 miles in a fridge and then gets out totally fine,
Totally fine.
I was like, oh, I think that was the moment, probably, like for sure that's the moment. And no, the fridge just never came back. So I was really kind of shocked by the lack of fridge later on in the movie. And I'll tell you how I felt about the movie. I think
I'll tell you how I felt about the movie. Gets up, just farts into the microphone and leaves the room.
Shits in his hand,
dude,
smears it
it's
on my
okay.
camera.
So I enjoyed a lot of the parts of the movie, and then it just does a lot of dumb shit that makes you sad and feel like, God dang, they could have had a decent Indiana Jones flick, like, you know, not landing in the top 3 by any means, but they could have had something here if they just took out the dumb shit, because I enjoyed the action. It was a lot of it was super goofy and over the top. I liked Shia LaBeouf. I liked Marion coming back. All that stuff was just silly as hell. This movie was wild as fuck, and I had fun with it. And then it just does a lot of dumb shit that kind of makes you go, God dang, dude! If they just would have focused, if they would have fucking focused. So that's how I feel about Indiana Jones.
Greg Miller.
No more questions.
Yeah. Oh wow, it's gonna be a rough podcast. He's just there for songs now.
Making the-
Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was the first time I ever was like, oh man, people really like Indiana Jones. Because Nick, I assume you went. We went. This is when IGN used to do movie days for big movies where we'd shut down IGN and we'd go see a movie. And this was one of the ones we went to. And I remember walking in with a similar knowledge of Indiana Jones. I hadn't watched all of them back to back, I guess, but you know what I mean. My childhood knowledge that I've talked about so many times of this. I'd be like, I remember Indiana Jones. Yeah, it was cool enough, whatever. And then the lights came up and I was like, oh, that wasn't a great movie, and people were fucking furious. I was like, oh wow, you really care about Indiana Jones? Holy shit! Like, for me, yeah, this isn't a good movie, but I think Andy gets a lot of it right there. That there's a lot of parts that like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I do like when it's interesting to see Indy and Marion back on the screen together, and for them still to have the chemistry that they have from the original one, especially like where he fucking drops that dope line on her right as he's about to leave. Right?
None of them were you.
They all failed for the same reason. What was that reason? They weren't you. And he climbs up, and she just gets those eyes and that smile. You're like, oh my god, what a sweet little moment. And then the rest of the way out, they're back to calling each other babe and doing all this stuff and being sweet together. Like, I dug that. I dug both of the India's professor jokes. Not necessarily the motorcycle ride up to the library thing, but when it's just this ridiculous thing of them in the library and the guy's got a question about the fucking thing and he gives it and get out of the library and they drive out. I like that. And I like the other one too, where he was explaining the difference of quicksand and the mud thing they were in, right? And she's like, shut up, this isn't school. But
he's your son. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you put him back in college?
Exactly.
Why did you have him finish school?
But it's this weird
immediate 180 shift.
It's this melding of what Nick's talking about, right? Where it's like, it's a movie that doesn't iterate, which then makes it seem so out of place and so old at parts. And it's like the lack of practical effects for so much of it, the green screen they are doing, the fact that, yeah, like now it's always that thing where I feel when you take a classic filmmaker or an 80s filmmaker, right? And this works, I guess, for George Lucas, but I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, so I'm not throwing shade. But you give them tools and you can do anything. Suddenly it all becomes unmoored because they've had to be grounded, I feel, when they made these movies in the 80s where most of the effects had to be practical in some way. And then you get into just ridiculous situations here, whether it is the nuking of the fridge, the Nazis, Terrodrome that they're fucking tearing down the forest with, and then Shia LaBeouf swinging from vines and with monkeys. And
Monkey friends.
Why are there all these shots of these fucking groundhogs?
So many.
It wasn't funny the first time, the second time, or the third time.
God. Reminds me of another movie. Bless, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm in the same place. I was actually expecting this movie to be worse than it was. Jumping into it, I thought it was going to be the worst movie of all time. I was expecting a trash fire because my knowledge of this movie comes from the South Park episode that was making fun of this movie. And so the only thing, and it's been forever since I've seen that episode, and so the only thing I really recall from that is aliens. And I was like, okay, cool. So the supernatural twist in this movie at the end is probably going to be aliens. I was shocked to see that an alien pops up halfway through the movie. And I was like, wait, whoa, we're doing this right now? That's a weird decision, but okay. And to have it be just like a baby alien, which I guess isn't an alien. It's a being from another dimension instead of space, which I think is a weird
space
move.
Between spaces. Don't worry about
Space between spaces, which I'm like, that feels like a very, just make them aliens. Why would you do that?
Seems like a little heady concept to introduce 2 hours in with one line of exposition from a guy who's been utterly kooky the entire time.
Yes, and I'm like, why? Little weird. Why is that worth? I don't know why I don't know why they made that a thing. It's just we understand aliens; they look like aliens. It's a fucking UFO. Just make them aliens.
Case in point, interdimensional beings. And I'm like, shut up, dude. We're fucking almost done with this movie. Let's get through it.
But yeah, I was expecting this movie to be terrible, and it's not terrible, but it's not good. Like it is easily the worst one of these, and I definitely agree with everything everybody said so far. Right, where it just feels like it doesn't iterate enough. There are some very wacky scenes that feel so out of place and feel so bad, like the vine swinging scene and the fridge scene. As soon as I saw the fridge scene, I immediately had to go to Twitter because I had to express myself somehow because I could not keep that energy in. And so I was just like, yo, I'm not going to say what scene, but like, what the fuck? And everybody was like, we know what scene you're talking about.
Everyone knows. Yeah, I saw that tweet. Bless. I was like, I absolutely know what you're talking about because that is the part of the movie that breaks what little reality we have in Indiana Jones. And that's my biggest disappointment with this is it's almost like the people who made this movie didn't watch the other movies, but that can't possibly be true because it's Steven Spielberg, Kathleen Kennedy, and George Lucas. the movie tries to pay homage, but fails so categorically because it's very lazy and because they failed to. I'm sorry, I said iterate. What I meant was they failed to evolve the character of Indiana Jones, and you know that from the very first second because he gets dragged out of the car and he's wearing the same fucking outfit he was wearing 20 fucking years ago. What does this guy do all day long? He's 60 now. Does he not moved on from getting his ass beat, and does he not have concussions? I digress.
You're just
I know that we
mad
have to
'cause he has
skate.
really good hair.
He has great hair and also look pretty good with the shirt off.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, like, if you're gonna make this movie and it's gonna be sort of like, you're gonna go through all of the other beats of all the other movies, like it's gotta be clever and it's gotta be good, and you have to go back to what harkens or what really makes Indiana Jones, which is you have to do live action effects, you have to do cool stunts, you have to do these things in real life. And when the whole thing is just a CG, like even the fucking Air Force base they're on at the beginning is CG around them. It's a soundstage. You couldn't even go out to Edwards Air Force Base and like shoot for real. The lighting looks so terrible in this movie.
A lot of
all the jungle
Menace.
effects
Oh my God, it
look
looks
terrible.
bad.
It's like, why did you even bother making this movie? Because you didn't need to make it. You're all billionaires at this point. Nobody was asking for another Indiana Jones movie, and the fact that you did means that you wanted to make the movie. So why did you like wuss out so much in the energy that you put into it? And the script is just confoundedly boring and confusing, and there's so much exposition in it, and Indy just divines shit out of thin air where you're like, oh, he must have taken the thing back there. Where did you get that from? Like, what are you talking about? The guy's been talking gibberish in riddles for fucking 45 minutes straight. That's it.
That is one of the bigger crimes of this movie. A lot of this movie is boring. Like it is way more boring than the 3 Indiana Jones movies that came out in the 80s. And I'm like, dude, with evolved technology, evolved filmmaking, all this stuff, right? You're in 2008. You should be able to at least make an action movie that's fun, even if the writing's going to be bad. And for the fact that they had both, right? The fact that the writing was bad and it was unfun, that to me is a bigger crime. And then also I do want to bring up Marion, because Marion is a character I loved in the first film, and I disagree a little bit. I think in this film, even though I like the fact that they brought back Marion, I didn't believe her and Indiana's relationship, because it very much felt for me like it came out of nowhere.
That's the thing, is it turns on a dime, right? From hate to that one line, and then she's right back into doe-eyed love with him, which I don't love the transition in terms of a character, but I love the performance, if that makes sense.
For sure, yeah, and I do like the line of "none of them were you," which feels like a nod to, hey, Willie sucked in Temple of Doom, and we know that you guys, and the girl in the third
the
one
girl was a Nazi, so that didn't work out so well.
She also banged my dad.
Yeah, and so here's a nod to, like, we know you guys probably miss Marion. Marion's back, cool. But they get married at the end, and when we got there, I was like, no, how did we get here? I did not get, even when they kissed, it didn't look like a good kiss. It looked like they kind of missed a little bit, and it's like, come on, bro, we got to do better than that.
That sucks because it's like the third act to a story, and we haven't seen the second act, right? With the Marion relationship, and this is why it feels so superficial, because we saw a great setup to it, and this would have been really cool if the second movie they had actually been together again and then broke up, and then in the third movie is like, I love the idea of bringing her back in the picture and having it be sort of a swan song for the series, but it all just feels so shoehorned in. And then you also have the Shia LaBeouf character, which we are literally and figuratively, I guess they were like, let's pass the reins over to him, because we have that one moment where the door opens up and it blows the hat over to him and he tries to put it on. He's like, not yet, dude, you're not going to do that. And then it just, obviously Shia LaBeouf, is Shia LaBeouf. And for whatever reason, they decided not to go with him or do any more of these movies. But it's just, all of it just feels like
2022.
That's right.
Oh, do they really? That was gonna be my question, because you mentioning that this movie was the number 2 grossing movie that year. I'm surprised that we didn't get one immediately after that, because again, like, this movie wasn't the worst movie in the world. Like, there's a lot of, I think, redeemable qualities to this movie, mainly in the fact that I think they take a lot of the good stuff that made the early Indiana Jones movies good and fed it into this movie, and with a little bit more polish and a little bit more I don't know, like, rooting out the bullshit that's in this movie, could have been decent and could have led to another movie where Shia LaBeouf is the main character, and could have been another highly grossing movie. I'm shocked that they didn't make another one.
Potentially, but the thing that I always had with the character of Shia LaBeouf's character in general is that, like, he's not the character that I want to be growing up, right? And so for me, always Indiana Jones is always sort of like escapism, right? It's fantasy. It's like, oh, I'd love to be Indiana Jones, like going around and like swinging from a whip and finding treasure and like having adventures and stuff like that. But like when you start to get sort of into the nuance of a guy who had a kid who didn't know about that kid for 20 years, you start getting into some serious territory there where you're like, this is no longer lighthearted action fare. Like, Indy's a deadbeat dad at this point. Like, I don't like anything about this story.
Nah, he didn't know. He didn't know.
He did leave Marion to treasure
He didn't know
scouring, though.
He didn't know about
the
the
altar.
baby.
This movie, I'm with Andy and blessed in the sense that I had never seen it, but I've heard a lot of bad things about the fridge and all that, and all those things were true. I can't believe how bad the bad in this movie is, and most of that's just the look. I hate the look of it. Like,
terrible.
there's no single shot that I'm like, oh man, this is really cool, where there definitely was in the other ones. And it is a mix of CG and green screen and just direction, and I think the set pieces are often interesting, but anytime they are, that it's covered in a nonsense mess of Shia LaBeouf splitting across two cars. And like, if it was practical and it looked like Jackie Chan was doing it, I would have been like, okay, this makes sense. But it didn't at all. It was just kind of a bunch of nonsense noise. And that noise kind of makes all the nonsensical moments that worked for me in the previous movies. Like, in the previous movies, had Shia LaBeouf's character interacted with a monkey while swinging, it would have been him looking over once, there would be one monkey swinging, and it would just be like a kind of funny thing. Like, look, we're both swinging. But because they had CG, there's like 100 monkeys and they're friends. Or it's all siding with them. And I'm like, this isn't good. But I think that the majority of this movie is as good as the other ones. I just think that it's kind of like there is a lot of heart there, and I just think that this one doesn't hit any of the highs of the others. So it's easily the worst of them. And some of the, like, this morning I got out of the shower and I'm like, aliens? Okay, yeah. Wow, they really went through with all of this, with the UFO kind of like going up, out, or whatever they want to call it, out of the thing as Indiana Jones stands there and rocks are falling all over the place, and he's just kind of super casual. I'm like, this sucks, man. Like, it's all the fun and like the risk and adventure of the Indiana Jones gets taken away when it clearly looks like just a CG kind of like smush on the lens.
Well, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me a lot of the obvious meme, like the criticisms of the prequel trilogies for Star Wars, when like George Lucas didn't want to leave the soundstage because he just likes sitting and drinking coffee. And that's exactly what this feels like. It feels like it has George Lucas's fingerprint all over it. And that Steven Spielberg is just like, whatever, man, I'm just here to have fun and make a good movie. Because, I mean, Spielberg was the guy that was responsible for making a lot of those practical stunts happen. And you really feel it. And even though, like, if you go back and watch those stunts, they don't look like they're moving that fast. It still looks like they're moving faster than the CG car, because, you know, your brain goes, that car is not actually moving. They're just standing on it and it's green screen around them. Mm-hmm. And that scene goes on for so fucking long and is so just devoid of any heart whatsoever. I digress.
And also, for a movie that's going to like bring people, like for a movie that's coming out 20 years after the other ones, and it's like, okay, cool, Marion from the first one's back. You'd think that they'd bring back other characters and like have some type of, especially at the wedding scene. And I was like reading some facts about this. Originally, Henry Jones Sr., Short Round, Sala, and Willie Scott were all going to appear at the wedding. And it's like, why didn't they? Like, that's just such a weird thing for like, what is this?
They were going to
movie? 'Cause,
CG him in, and the computers just
probably because they required someone to pick up
render.
a phone, and they're like, guys, we don't want to work that hard.
And it's one of those things too. Technically, they never really show the indie section of the wedding. It's always just shot, and everybody's sitting in her section. So it's possible they are all over there. You know what I mean? None of the dad. He's dead. Maybe his ghost. Maybe it's a Force ghost kind of thing.
When did this movie come out?
2008.
It was probably time by then to be like, John Rhys Davies shouldn't be playing anything but a white man.
It's also possible that Sean Connery had retired by then, but
he did.
Yeah,
but he retired, and they asked him, and he still said no.
Oh, okay, sorry, I missed that.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's sorry, go ahead.
Just a fact here is Harrison Ford was adamant that he got to wield the whip. Paramount executives were saying that they wanted it to be CG. And he was like, no, I'm freaking holding the goddamn whip. He also refused to dye his hair for the role, arguing that Indy's appeal wasn't in his youth, but in his imagination and resourcefulness. Quote, my ambition in action is to have the audience look straight in my face and not the back of a stuntman's head. I hope to continue that no matter how old I get. Good for you, Harrison Ford, but stop making movies at this point.
I never thought Harrison Ford would ever say something so...
Smart?
Well, I don't know.
Like,
I
he
just
cared
always,
about the movie.
Yeah, exactly. I just always expect Harrison Ford to be like, I fucking hate this.
I'm here for the check.
He loves indie though. I think that's like what gets missed is that like a lot of his like his attitude across like his entire career is just taken from his attitude towards Han Solo. Whereas like he loves the character of Indiana Jones, whereas like Han Solo he's a little less enthused about. So
Get over it, Harrison.
Or they're
Ford.
exactly the same. But
Multi-millionaire, Jesus.
I will say, like, Harrison Ford is, to speak positively about the movie and to talk about some of its merits, he does still feel like Indy. And that's super important for me because a lot of times, especially like when, you know, the newest Star Wars films, Mark Hamill stepping back into the role just never really felt like he was able to reclaim what Luke Skywalker would be 30 some odd years later. Whereas I remember watching this and he gets out for the first time and he's got that same snarky attitude. I was like, okay, this is Indiana Jones. Again, I don't love that they decided to really kind of have him just sort of standing still in time with the outfit that he wears and sort of the things that he's doing. Cause I kind of feel whenever I see a character that's like that old still doing the same thing, it always kind of makes me feel sad. Like you never moved on with your life. Like you're still doing these things, but granted it's an adventure movie. So what are you going to do?
Isn't that kind of the point of the movie?
Yeah, it is. It's just, I wish they would have been a little bit more thoughtful with their approach to this whole film in general and not tried to make a movie that felt like it should be in the 80s. I think they could have pushed it a little farther, especially when you're bringing in a kid and you're bringing in Marion and you're getting yourself into Superman Returns territory where you're like, whoa, there's a lot to unpack here. And this is supposed to be lighthearted fare. I just like, to me, it just seems like they completely missed the mark with where this character should have been. Especially, you know, I don't know. That's just how I feel about it.
Let's get to the plot.
Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. You're a teacher, part-time. They had to have had a better take on that one. I'm just going to throw this out there right there. Could have been a really cool moment.
But it killed in the trailer. Remember the trailer? It killed in the trailer.
I thought it was
That's right. We talked about this.
I thought it was a cool line. I thought it was
Tim, if you thought the Paramount logo fade to Monument Valley was lazy, how about a gopher hole?
No,
Wait,
I love this one.
Is that
This
a
one was
gopher
good.
hole or is that a CG gopher hole? You can't even fucking have someone go out and build a pile of dirt. It's dirt. It's free.
I love this. Is my favorite Nick recap of all time already. We're 3 seconds in because that's what I was
You can
thinking
take
too.
the dirt into the studio. You don't even have to go outside, George. Have a fucking intern. Barrett Courtney would do it for free. He would go to fucking get dirt and bring you dirt.
Nah, that's $100 at least for me.
I mean, he can afford it.
Also,
Anyway,
someone is saying in the chat that there was a different take for that line in the trailer. Like it's not the same take,
Oh,
which is interesting.
we did talk about this a long time ago, and there is a different take, and it's a much better take in the trailer. Go watch it. It's hilarious. I don't know why they used this one. Maybe there was like a scratch on the film or whatever, or maybe they were like, it doesn't really go well with all the fucking CG gophers that we had at the beginning of it, so let's go with this take, because this is the right energy we're looking for. What kind of energy is that? Boring and slow. Good, perfect. The group of teenagers
This
and
movie's
19
not
fishy.
boring or slow. It just is not great, like with what they're doing. I think some of the other ones are way more boring than this, honestly.
I think that this movie has kinetic energy, and there's a lot of things going on. We'll
Yes.
move on. A group of teens in the 1950s flash some army men, but they're not army men. They're Russian army men. Nevada, 1957. They head to, I think, Area 51. I wrote that in here, but I don't think I ever saw any signs.
it
I'll
is
just say
Area
it's
51. When they're in the hangar, the doors are closed, and there's a big 51.
51. Thank you. One of the guys leans down to tie his shoes, and all the other guards pop up and they kill the guards at the base with relative ease. You would think that it's a little harder to sneak into Area 51, but it was the 50s. We discover that they've been keeping Indy and Mac, played by Ray Winstead. Is that how you say his name? Winston? In the back of their truck, and Indy hasn't changed his outfit in 20 freaking years. Yeah, at some point, here's my thing. Where do you still find this shirt? It's not the same shirt you've been wearing, right? At this point, we've seen it torn multiple times. Do you go back to the same haberdashery in fucking, in London to find the same outfit over and over again?
Nick,
Put him
you're
in a
going to tell
different pair
me
of
in
slacks.
20 years, you close your eyes and you think of Greg Miller and you don't picture me in black rim glasses with Converse on.
Yes, but the shirt you're wearing will have deteriorated off your skin by then.
It's not literally the same. I'll be wearing some stupid graphic tee for sure too.
Same leather
Probably
jacket,
a
same
Superman
fedora.
shirt.
I digress. This scene, again, is one of the moments where I was like, I cannot believe they chose to shoot this in a studio and have it. It looks so fake. Not only does it look fake, it looks like a glam shot. Everyone's like glistening and glowing for some reason. All of the noir aspects of all the indies before this have just sort of gone out the window here. Totally terrible.
It's every game in the early 2000s, late 90s, where everything just had bloom all over the place. Bloom everywhere.
Yeah, the blue, it kills me. Indy is about to get his ass kicked for some anti-Russian sentiment that he's putting out there, but Kate Blanchett stops him with her terrible Ukrainian accent. Now, Tim, I don't know if you have this piece of trivia, but it popped up for me. Steven Spielberg cast real Russians all around them so that when they were speaking, they wouldn't make the mistake they had before where the Germans were speaking, but had a terrible accent and all their German was terrible. He was like, I want real Russians. It feels like real Russians. And then Kate Blanchett comes in and it takes you so out of it that you're like, why were all these decisions made? Although shout out to Kate Blanchett, because even though she's in this terrible movie and has this terrible accent, she still fucking crushes.
I think
as Arena Spalko,
Totally fine.
I thought we were gonna talk about the wig.
the wig's pretty bad too.
The hair is.
Is it a
terrible.
wig? I don't know. Wigging out with Scarpino.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Wigging Out with Scarpino. Shout out to Harrison Ford for not dyeing his hair. That is pretty cool. And shout out to Arena Spalko for borrowing Evangeline Lilly's wig from Ant-Man and putting it on her head. And I know you guys are going to say, Nick, it's multiple times she said it's not a wig. You don't have proof. It's her word versus mine.
Exactly.
Who are you going to trust? Who are you going to trust?
We
A-list
do have
celebrity
proof.
Evangeline Lilly or me?
She's in
Don't
Disney's
trust the big
pocket.
wigs. Don't
We
trust
have
the big
proof
wigs.
that in this one it is in fact a wig because
This is
Harrison
terrifying.
Ford saw her walking around the lot
Laughed.
and she was blonde and he was like, "Who the fuck is that?" Didn't realize it was her.
Fucking Ford.
He's an old ass man. He's an old ass man. She slaps him across the face after she tries to read his mind, which is super weird. At first, I was like, "Oh, they're going to set her up as a clairvoyant. That's kind of cool." And she's got this certain like kind of power. No, she's just a little bit daffy. And then they head into a giant warehouse behind them. But it's not just any warehouse, guys. It's a computer-generated recreation of the warehouse from Raiders of the Lost Ark. And this was such a cool idea that doesn't work, unfortunately, for me. But they're not looking for the Lost Ark, Tim. Although if I were them, I'd be like, I want to take this fucking thing as a constellation also, because this thing is even more powerful than the aliens. But then Indy uses gunpowder from a grenade to find what they're looking for, which is a highly magnetized box of mystery. They find a case the size of a coffin and load it onto the truck. It's labeled, says Roswell, New Mexico, so it must be aliens. But we're not quite sure yet. Indy uses the opportunity to put one over on the guards and holds Dr. Spalko at gunpoint. But Mac double crosses him, and for all that hot cheddar the Russians are sending his way because he is a degenerate gambler. Indy once again.
I liked the magnetic stuff, like of them finding
That was a cool
knowing
effect.
how to
Same.
find the box and stuff like that. That was cool.
I thought the effect looked terrible though.
It looked
When he throws it
terrible.
in the
Yeah.
air and it
Mhm.
looks like
Yeah.
it's fucking searching for
Oh,
whatever
well,
the box
it doesn't
is.
make make
No.
sense at all in reality. Like this isn't some magical power; it's magnetism.
Yeah.
The
Cool
powder
idea.
might move and then fall to the ground. It's not going to just flow through the wind as if there's a draft in the. Yeah, it made zero sense. And then also the rest of the effect kind of only applied to when they wanted the effect to apply. Like the magnetism wasn't always happening. Like they make sure to focus on the lights to show the lights moving, and you're like, oh, cool, the magnet stuff is
Like,
happening. But then anything else doesn't do it. But they did have
Nothing
a
else
little
was
cool-
metal.
The thing I did like though was
Didn't matter.
again, it was
Gold.
CG. It was CG, but the dog tags started moving as the soldiers were getting near it, which looked kind of neat, but it was CG, so it didn't look kind of neat, you know.
But it's one of those things where, and granted, this is obviously a stupid nitpick. I'm saying it mostly for comedic value. But if I were Indy, I'd be like, how are we going to find these things? You look up in the air, you look at all the lights. All of them are pointed downward, except for like the three that are above this thing that are just clearly being pulled toward it. I'm like, I think it's over there. I think it's right there.
Let's
Give me
start
one
our
of your
search
grenades
there.
anyway. But let's go. Let's start there. Yeah, and see what happens.
Well, when the car chase eventually happens, when the car breaks through and they knock over some box, what is shown in that box?
The Ark of the Covenant.
Hell yeah.
I could not make it out. I don't know why. I was like,
Yeah.
I
so
assume that's like probably the Ark of the Covenant or something else, but it just didn't really look like much to me.
It was the Ark of the Covenant, and they play the Raiders of the Lost Ark. They play the music, just
Nice
a quick
nod.
little music floor from that, which was really, really cool. Of course, this whole thing pops off. He gets away. He swings, uses his whip, swings, but it doesn't quite make it, and he falls backward into
I
the truck
liked it.
behind him. And he goes, "Damn, I really thought that was going to work."
Oh, it was closer, yeah.
I
It's
thought it was
just
closer.
like Harrison Ford flustered old man Harrison Ford, I'm always down for that. Immediately when that moment happened, and then also the moment later on with the "why don't you send him back to school" line, it just reminded me of that's not how the Force works. Like,
Yeah.
I just love old man Harrison Ford being grumpy.
Then Indiana Jones and Dovchenko fight in the chamber where they made Weapon X, and Indy pulls a Riggs from Lethal Weapon and like chokes him out with his legs, and then burns the rest of the Russians alive with a test rocket that shoots him out.
It was
the desert.
insane.
That
This was moment one that I was like, am I watching the right movie? I clearly am. But what the fuck is this?
Indy makes his way to a small town that turns out to be a nuclear test site. And as we know from earlier, they said, hey, this whole site's locked down for 24 hours because we're doing a test. That test turns out to be a bomb. They're about to explode. Indy gets in there and sees all the TVs and stuff on. And man, this place is elaborate. I guess they really they left the TV on. That's hardcore. That's someone who's really
They need to know what the effects of all this would be. You know what I mean?
Guess so. Let's see. Of course, seeing no alternative. I do love the part where he's been hiding from the Russians the entire time, and then when he realizes what's going on, he chases after him. He's like, "Hey, stop! Like, pick me up!" And they're like, "Fuck you, we're gone." And then seeing no other option, of course, he does what all of us would think to do: lock yourself into an old-timey refrigerator and just hope.
Lead lined.
It's lead lined. We make sure we know it's lead lined. It's not impact proof. Worth noting that the lead,
Padding in there.
There's no
And
airbags
it's also
in
not
there.
locked.
Yeah, I was gonna say, have you guys ever seen a locked refrigerator?
Yes.
Oh,
no.
well, no. The thing about those things is they used to lock from the inside, and kids would get trapped in them and die. So that's why they
that
actually
guy
have.
said that
shit.
line. That's
Yeah,
why
we
he
talked
said
about
that
this.
line of like, you know how dangerous it is to put yourself in a refrigerator. Yeah.
But then he got out.
Easy.
Yeah, he got out, Tim, because it launched him 15 miles into the air, and then he tumbled violently for a solid 30 seconds until the door eventually opened. So that's how you had to open those. That's why That's why you said don't go into the refrigerator, kids, because if we do, I have to launch you into the fucking
The only
stratosphere.
way. You're going to
If
be
you-
okay, but
Yeah, if you get locked in the refrigerator, we have to launch a nuke to get you out.
I did like the scene of him walking around the town and kind of like putting it together. And I liked how visually different it was from anything we've seen before. And like seeing Indiana Jones in the outfit we know him, but like in a completely different location. I was like, this works for me. And I think could have been really cool if they kept diving into it instead.
Oh yeah,
They just
again,
didn't do
that moment, all of the mystery stuff, I enjoyed up until, I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, some of they kind of worked against themselves with it a little bit because the effect of the actual explosion in the town getting decimated, I thought was so good until you realize that they have to sell that somehow the refrigerator survived the impact and got flung out instead of getting crushed by the house the houses that were all tumbling down within the explosion. It is what it is, but.
Why weren't there a bunch of fridges flying?
Why didn't every single fridge in this town go flying down?
Again, the concept, it's to me, it's just super lazy. And it's super lazy because they had a really cool action set piece right before this that had to do with that like supersonic rocket engine that, by the way, might actually go fast enough to outrun a blast like that. And you have to imagine some screenwriters like, what if he used this? Like, what if we orchestrated it to like, somehow he used this thing, and they were like, no, guys, that's too hard. It's in the test facility. Just have him get in the fridge. It's lead lined. And then their version of Kevin was like, lead stops the radioactivity to a degree, but it won't stop the actual fucking face melting blast that's coming at him.
It's really weird because it's as if they were like, this is the only thing we can do, But it's like
This is the only thing we can do.
You could have had him outrun and get on the Russian car. Like
ran
there's
past
a
a
lot
bunch
of
of
other
cars.
solutions.
Fallout shelter beneath the town somehow.
Yeah, like I would have loved it if Steven Spielberg had to go out of town for a week or whatever, and he came back and they're like, yeah, and then we launched him with a fridge. He's like, why do we have to do that? It's like, it's our only option. It's like, no, I'm sure there's a
painted
lot of
ourselves
other
into a
things
corner.
that can happen. There's a lot of other stuff we can do.
Also, I didn't believe the train thing that was going at like a supersonic speed that he was sitting in front of with the other Russian dude. I did not believe that for a second. He would survive that either.
No.
That was
Oh,
fucked
no.
up.
And why
That
did it
seemed
stop?
again it seemed because that's the test or
Because
whatever.
it ran
for the
out of
thing.
fuel, probably.
But it's
I
like
imagine.
that's like one of the first times when you're watching, like, oh, they're really trying to play this for laughs on like the hanging thing of both Harrison Ford and the guy going, like, letting the wind blow their mouths open and shit. It's just like this. What are you doing?
Well, I
Why
liked
is
how
this
goofy
happening?
they looked when they finally like got up and they're like stumbling around and shit.
Yeah.
Indy gets interrogated by the janitor from Scrubs, and we get some backstory that Indy, in fact, was in the war. So we got to mention too, because remember the last one was pre-World War II. This one is now happening in the 50s, and Indy served in the OSS, which was the predecessor to the CIA. Indy wants to know what's in the backs, and then General Ross comes in and makes a joke
Thunderbolt
about
Ross.
all of the children who go into those locked old refrigerators and die. And then here's what my first thought was. I was like, have we learned nothing? This guy's the bad guy, right? But hey, so for my expectations, this guy never comes back.
Remember, he was the bad guy in the OC, and he was. So, I mean, that's why.
Was he a
there
bad
you
guy,
had
or
that.
was he just a misunderstood, super rich, evil guy?
He was the bad grandfather.
He was the grandpa,
He was
right?
not
Yeah.
nice to Sandy. I don't like him.
True. I think he came around by the fourth season. I could be wrong. I don't remember the fourth. Which one was the one that he started being a shoot fighter? I can't remember. Let's see. Ross gives Indy some backstory on Spalco, who is going around the world looking for spooky relics. And then they send him on his way. And then back at the university, new Marcus comes in because old Marcus died to interrupt his class. And I love new Marcus. I forgot the name of the actor, but he was in Harry Potter. And he was great in it. The dean tells him that the FBI guys are making him fire Indy. And Indy's like, "What? You should have fought for me." He goes, "I did. I resigned." And he's like, "Oh, well, you didn't need to go that hard on it."
Oh, damn.
I'm
Maybe
super
take it
wealthy
back. I don't
because
wanna-
I steal a bunch of gold. Yeah, exactly. Indy heads to the trains. Indy heads home with the dean in tow, and they commiserate over the state of the country. And we get some backstory here that we are knee deep in McCarthyism, with anti-communist fever running rampant. We'll see that later in a little bit. Indy heads to the train station where some Russian spies and Shia LaBeouf are waiting for him. Mutt tells Indy that his old friend Harold Oxley is in trouble and they have to go for some pie. 6 months ago, Oxley found a crystal skull in Peru that was very real, and he was off to Acador, a mythological city of El Dorado, a giant city of solid gold or something.
El goddamn Dorado.
El goddamn Dorado. And again, this is obviously a staple in the Indiana Jones franchise, but there's so much stuff mentioned here that I'm like, we couldn't have just simplified this a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I luckily had to rewind that part because I was like, you know what? It's okay that I have to rewind this because I need to find out who the fuck Oxley is again. I need to understand what their relationship is because I didn't really catch it amongst all the other gibberish that they were mentioning.
Well, it's
Right. Well,
extra
there's-
hard too because they introduce a bunch of characters here, but then they also make reference to a bunch of characters that we've seen before but are now dead via pictures or statues or other things.
Right.
And none of their names are like that definitive where we're like, oh, I know exactly who this is, except for Short Round, who never makes an appearance. That it's just, yeah, it's like not only is it exposition, but it's just kind of like, it feels convoluted in terms of character choice.
I'm not here for a history class, dog. Give me come on.
Well, it's also confusing too because when you're introducing characters that are incredibly important, like you have to, it's easier to see them first, right? And that's what we're kind of used to, is like seeing these characters pop up first. Even in The Last Crusade, when they make mention, it's a fun reveal where he's like, "Your father was the person who was leading the exposition, but we had seen him already in the first scene. We saw him counting like in Latin." So we have that touchstone at least to what he sort of sounds and looks like. Anyway, we get a bunch of stuff here, but guess what? Those G-men, they're not G-men, they're KGB men.
Oh my god.
Oh.
That's what I did there. Oh, wait, before that, legend has it the crystal skull was stolen from the 15th century, and whoever brings it back to Acador can take all of its hidden power. Mutt's mom went down there to find Ox, and now she's missing too. What's her name? Mary. Mary, huh? I knew a Mary once. Marion? No, we're not going to get to that till the second act because we need to reveal
Lots of
it.
Marys. He says lots of Marys.
Lots of Marys in my past,
Shia
buddy.
LaBeouf freaks out.
I do love what he tells Shire. Just like, all right, come on, just chill out. Like you don't gotta
Prove how
be a
tough
tough
you
guy
are.
all the time.
So his mom sent him a letter with a treasure map or something that's in code, but the Russian spies want it and they're willing to pay in lead. They take out their guns and he's like, and then he goes, "Mutt, start a fight. Punch that greaser or that jock over there." And then a good old fashioned jock versus greaser fight breaks out. And boy, if I had a dollar.
greasers!
That
All right.
actually got a laugh out of me though when he runs over and it's just there's just a fucking room full of greasers and he just joins the ranks. That got
The
me.
girl,
That gets me.
the girl who punches Shia LaBeouf in the diner scene is Sasha Spielberg, daughter of Steven Spielberg and Wiley Scott from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Wow.
Very cool. Wow. Wow. Let's see. They get in a fight. All that stuff happens, and during which Indy and Mutt escape. Let's see. I'm sorry, I got lost here. Seems like the most straightforward course of action. We get a motorcycle chase. That's actually kind of fun, but Mutt rides his way through Yale or Hogwarts. Fun fact, I don't understand colleges that are outside of California, so they could all be the same to me. They ride through they ride through an anti-communist rally. Again, we get more of that. And smash into a statue of Marcus, I think, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
which
the
then
plaque
decapitates.
reads, "In proud memory of Marcus Brody, Dean of Students, 1939 through 1944, with honor and loyalty."
Right. And as they smash into the statue of him, it decapitates him and his head rolls down into the bad guys. And man, what a great metaphor for where this series went. They slide through the library. We get we get another Wilhelm scream because that happened before. And then Indy does some office hours finally with that kid who
Hate
just
it. What the fuck? The tonality of this is just so off.
Professor
have
Jones,
jokes,
I'm
it's
glad
fun.
you're here. He just sit in I'd be like, what the fuck is happening, man? Can I get an A for this? What's going on? Back at Indy's house, which absolutely, by the way, seems like the place to go if KGB agents are fucking on your trail. Go right back to your house. We get more backstory about Indy translates Ox's letter from its original language of Coahoma, I think. Coahoma. The letter contains a riddle to follow the Nazca lines to Nazca, Peru. Map time. We get that cool map effect that I love so much. Now we're in Peru. Indy and Mutt find Ox in a local sanitarium, or at least that's where they're told he is. So they head there while Indy tells Mutt about his cool. I was like, man, I used to rebel against my parents, and I got kidnapped by a Pancho Villa, and it's really, really cool. And then Mutt's like, I rebelled against my mom too. I quit school, and now I work on motorcycles. And Indy's like, hey, man, do you. If that's what you want to do, don't let anyone tell you any differently. At the sanitarium, they discover that the Russians already found Ox and took him away, but when they examine his cell, they find some skull drawings with the word return written in various different languages. Return the skull. They're like, we got to return the skull. Also, this cell is massive for one man. I don't know what kind of space they got down there in Peru, man, but their sanitarium's really spacious.
Before we get too far from it, one fact that I want to say about the library scene where the dude asked for the help, the student help, Spielberg himself was saying that he really wanted Harrison Ford in that scene to say the line of like 70% of all archaeology is done in the library that he had in the last movie. Mm-hmm. He wanted in this one to be like, yeah, you got to get out of the library. And that was a reference to the other line he said, which is X never marks the spot, and then X did mark the spot. So Steven Spielberg's like, that's a fun throwback. And it's like, no, that's complicated and weird.
Yeah. I mean, I got it. I understand. And I got that line at that moment, but I just was like, this whole thing is unnecessary.
It's a comedy beat where, to me, like the comedy comes from Harrison Ford being on the same motorcycle as Shia LaBeouf. Like that's funny. It's a funny visual. There's action happening, and it's like cool. But then to have that extra level, it's like okay, this is such a just end cap to the scene to be able to move on to now we're in Peru.
They figure out the starting point for the journey is the grave of Oriana. So they head there. Oriano, excuse me. So they head there next. They get attacked by some crazed grave protectors with poisonous darts.
It scared the shit out of me, dude.
Scary and fucking weird.
When you get the first glimpse of him underneath the ground from that top-down shot, and you don't realize it's a mask, you just see a skeleton's face moving. I was like, oh my god, are they like introducing monsters already? Like this is crazy.
I'm still confused about how they got there, or like what they're up to. Are they do they just live there?
They protect the thing.
How do they eat? Like,
so here's the thing.
Do they eat?
Oh, you're right. You know what, Nick? You're right. It's Oriana. Sorry. You're right.
Is it Oriana? Okay.
Oriana Grande.
The people that attacked Indiana and Mutt in the graveyard are not as historically inaccurate as one may think. Pre-Spanish Peru Incans did, in fact, practice martial art known as rumimaki, which literally translates as hard hands. And it was a martial art taught to protect graves.
Cool.
So it's like,
damn.
I don't know if it looked exactly like that, but...
Put it on the record.
The shit out of me. Yeah, they were frightening. Once the mask got knocked off, I was like, all right, you're not a monster. It's okay.
Of course, after Indy makes short work of them, Mutt looks up at him as he's standing on the top of the thing, and he goes, "You're a teacher?" And Indy goes, "Part-time." And then they head down to the grave, and Mutt gets attacked by very CG scorpions that aren't nearly as creepy as they would have been if they had just used real scorpions. And I know that's very dangerous to be working with, but man, how awesome was it when we saw like real snakes and real bugs? Didn't that creep you out a lot? Did this scene creep anyone out?
Oh yeah, it did. It did for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Didn't creep me out.
I didn't realize I was going to be freaked out by like, and I think just because of how gangly they are, you know, like they got so many appendages
They do.
So many-
yeah,
so many
I've never
things
liked that
hanging
about
off.
scorpions.
Yeah.
The thing that got me was this the scene where Mutt got bit by a scorpion and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indy was like, oh no, the
Was it-
smaller they are, the more you got to worry. That one's a big one. You're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
This is the
thinking
same.
that would come. That didn't come back around, right? Like I'm not crazy.
No.
Now we got fire.
No.
ants
That
later.
that felt weird.
Yeah,
that did
You're
not.
that's
just
a
come back.
telling us
missed opportunity.
scorpion facts, man. Don't now you know. Blessing.
Yeah,
Now
But
you
like,
know.
why'd they do that's what I was expecting when we got all the bugs that ended up being the big ants. When what's her name, the weird wig lady, when she had the gun aimed and she got bit by a thing, I was like, oh, the small scorpion, sweet. So we're gonna get the payoff for that. We just didn't, and they ended up being big old
Yeah.
ants.
No, but she
Weird
does
decision.
crush one
Spielberg.
between her knees, which is cool.
Oh yeah, it is squirts everywhere.
Spielberg, give me the fucking camera right now, okay? Pass me the camera, all right?
Do it.
There, 20 minutes later into the scene, Harrison Ford's doing something crazy, and then and then he falls. Something jumps on his back, right? He's like, "What's on me, kid?" As Shia LaBeouf, he's like, "It's a scorpion. How big?" He's like, "Oh, it's small, Indy." Chaos ensues, right? Like right
Right.
there, the movie,
Fun.
and then movie's great. Everybody loves the movie now, you know.
Andy, I'd like
I
to
would've
give you
fixed
this
it.
money. I'd like to watch that
honestly.
movie.
Yeah.
Before the scorpion gets to act, it falls off. And everybody's like, what happened? And it's like, oh, Indy's emitting radiation. Like he's slowly poisoning everyone and everything around.
Why?
I thought
Because
you
he
were
was
gonna say
20
they had
feet
a-
from a nuclear blast.
I thought you were gonna say they had a stunt scorpion.
India's the Chernobyl of Nevada right now. Let's see. We move on. Sorry, Mag. Sorry, I lost my place. Oh, anyway, they go down there. They go down through this little cool, unbalanced, like circle, which I thought was kind of a fun thing. Where he's like,
Can
"Come
you
over
imagine
here."
the fear if you're Shia LaBeouf and you just see Indy disappear? Like, all right, it's over.
It's
Like,
done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in
Like,
Peru.
I don't know how I'm getting out of here. Somehow, like, first off, can we talk about he brought his fucking motorcycle with him? That's crazy. That's a lot to worry about. And like, how do they pay for all the flights? Go ahead, Greg Miller.
You're going to tell me you don't bring your guitar everywhere you go, Andy?
I'm not Fran Mirabella.
Accurate. Point taken.
That's very true. And thank God for that. We love Fran, but you gotta leave that guitar at home. You're just going to Starbucks, buddy. Let's see. They find the giant disc. They eventually find the chamber where Oriana's men and his men are preserved by outer wrapping. They look. There's a cool effect where like they look at it. He's like, "Wow, he's perfect," and then the wind hits it, or the oxygen hits it, and it just dissolves, which is kind of cool. And
was
then
cool.
they figure out that Oriana's body, the gilded man, is what they called him, is in fact magnetized. So they just ditch that body and dig deeper and find the crystal skull, but not just any crystal skull. Blessing. No human being would carve a skull like this. This must be from another dimension. Oxley found the skull, but must have returned it for some reason. And I'm like, what? What? How? What? Maybe Oxley didn't find this. I don't. How do you? Okay. And they divine that by looking down at the ground, and much like there's two sets of footprints,
One of
but
them
they
was
look
Jesus.
the same
Now
size.
there's only
so
one footprint.
He's
he must
carrying
have-
you and hopping
Yeah.
I'm
on
so
one foot.
confused. I did not pick up on any of that during the first watch because I was like, so you returned it? Why would your friend? Okay, I guess.
I don't
And
know,
when they come back around to it, I was like, oh, okay. That wasn't as clear as I think they wanted it to be.
No, it's a lot of, and that's a problem I have with the movie is there's just a lot of those small leaps in logic, or rather holes in logic, I should say, that just get explained away by a couple lines of exposition, and it's just lazy story, like lazy screenwriting. Like, you know, in the Last Crusade, he had to decipher his dad's journal and figure out all those clues to go find his dad, and they kind of wanted to recreate this and that, but this just becomes so convoluted and it just takes you out of it. Anyway, when they head back upstairs, guess what they find, guys? Mac and the Russians are waiting for them. Map time. We're on a boat this time. They head somewhere else on the river and camp out for the night so they can drink vodka and Russian breakdance by the fire.
Nice.
Mac,
They were
and
getting
Indy,
it.
no, they were fucking going after it. They were that party was about to heat up. Someone was going to pass them like whatever the 50s equivalent to Molly is, and they were just going to get real
Gasoline. They're going to hop gas.
Gasoline, gas pills. Let's see. Mac and Indy have a scene where Mac tells him, he's like, be smart, Indy, just like Berlin. And he's like, are you talking in code? I'm never going to trust you again, literally. Until 5 minutes from now. Then Sparkle comes in and quotes Dr. Oppenheimer's quote that he said when he saw the first nuclear explosion. Quote, now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds, which is arguably the coolest fucking thing you could ever say.
I saw a bit of trivia about this that it doesn't add up with the timeline of real life of when he said that quote. Like he wouldn't say that quote for another like 15 years.
Oh,
In real life.
man. Damn,
Yeah,
that movie's
also-
bad.
No, in this universe, that dude
Exactly, it
got inspired by
happened.
this character.
That's
you
fair.
go. There you go.
That is fair. And with that,
Oh,
let me
wow.
tell you about our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. I absolutely love MeUndies. I wear it all the time. As you guys see, my t-shirts are all MeUndies at this point because I love that soft micro-modal fabric. And guess what? They also make undies and socks and lounge pants and hoodies and onesies. It's crazy. They offer everything that you can put on your body, and you should. It's fantastic because while right now I'm wearing pretty much all black head to toe, they got a ton of options, especially when it comes to the undies. They have a whole bunch of different prints. There's bold prints, adventurous prints, classic prints. Right now, I'm just wearing green ones, just a classic green. Don't want to get too crazy. But tomorrow, who knows? Maybe I'll get some pizza on some neon blue. It's great. I love having choices. You could too have choices by going to MeUndies.com/morning. That's MeUndies.com/morning to get 15% off your first order and free shipping. MeUndies.com/morning.
Perfect
Now we're
segue.
back. Yeah, thank you.
Let's see. Spocko tells him about Stalin's new mind weapons. He's like, we're going to fucking take over your brains. You're not even going to know it. That's what the skull is. The legend of Akator is all true. As a city of supreme beings with technology and paranormal abilities. And then she shows him the alien corpse they took from Nevada. She's like, we found these all over Russia, but for some reason we need this other one too. They bring in Oxley, who's mad as a hatter, and then the skull opens a psychic channel if you look into it, but Ox looked into it for too long, and now he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. That's what the Russians are after. Power over the mind of man. Indy looks into the skull and his brainwaves start going bananas. The music here reminds me of Basic Instinct, which freaks me out a little bit.
I also just like I don't ever need Harrison Ford to be directed to act in a distressed manner where his head.
All right, yeah, Harrison, jerk your body around and your head around. Got it. I'm like, no, this ain't working. This ain't
Can we
doing
fast
it.
forward this? Can we? We need to speed this up. It just looks really bizarre.
Like CG this part.
Yeah.
And you would think, by the way,
let's
that,
do the
like,
Doctor Strange, like weird, kind of looking into the future.
so this is the part, by the way, where the aliens sort of embed in his mind that he has to return the skull, which we know because he has one line later that says, they told me I have to return the skull. This scene should have been sort of important and doesn't feel important. It just sort of feels like we're laying out some exposition there, but I would have liked to have seen a visual of him like having flashes of the aliens or something like that. Also, another thing that would have been cool was not knowing there was a paranormal or supernatural or alien thing happening until the kind of third act of the story, like we've sort of seen before, right? Like for Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, we don't get any elements that are outside of the reality of what we know until really they go into the temple and find the knight, right? Everything else is just sort of like standard fare for Indy. And then we see this knight, and you're like, oh shit, this stuff's real. This might actually be real. Whereas we sort of know aliens are around from the first act of this movie, which kind of takes this thing out of it at the end.
Well, that was the weirdest thing for me is like we get to the Kingdom Skull, the Crystal Skull, so quickly in the film, and even before that, we get the aliens and references to all of it. So I was convinced that by the end of the movie, it was going to be almost a reversal, like more of like an Uncharted 4 type thing, where it's like, no, there was hints that this was going to be supernatural, but it actually
we did
isn't.
do the supernatural way.
Yeah, and like that could have been cool, but like when this movie fucking ends with like
a spaceship
what we all
launching.
envision of alien, like what an alien looks like, they're like, yeah, the green one, nah, we're gonna make him gray. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's very, very weird. Let's see. They bring him outside and they're like, we're gonna torture Mutt unless you help us find this thing. And he's like, that's not enough for me. I don't care about this fucking kid. He didn't even go to college. And then they're like, well, okay, how about this? Mutt's mom, bring out Marion Ravenwood. And he's like, Marion, what are you doing here? And then Indy figures out. They just skip through that pretty quickly, and Indy figures out that Ox can write down the way to the city via something called auto writing, and he draws some ideograms that Indy quickly translates to "the water sleeps until the great snake," which means he wants them to follow the curve of the river down to the Amazon. Tim, would you have gotten that?
Oh yeah, first try.
Absolutely.
I appreciate
would
like how obvious doing this is writing. And then she's like, "Oh, I should have thought of that." I'm like, "Yeah, no shit.
No fucking shit." Yeah. And also, like, I hate moments like this in movies that take me out of it so much, where I'm looking at it and I'm like so concentrated on There's no way that this guy is just absentmindedly writing and Harrison Ford's just half-ass holding up this thing while having a conversation.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's going to write and he's like doing these beautiful drawings. And I'm like,
That's what I was
This
gonna
is
say.
so weird.
He has amazing form for how
Yeah.
well these images.
He
turn
never
out.
did. The aliens did it though.
You imagine if we did that, you'd be like, it would cut and you wouldn't see what they're drawing, and then it just cuts to what the page is. It's fucking gibberish. It's just scribbles.
and Indiana Jones would still look at it and be like, oh my God, we have
There's
to go to New
something here.
Jersey.
There's
El
something
Dorado
here.
was an alien city. I knew it. Let's see. Mutt punches a dude and they escape into one of the only things I ever feared in the 80s, guys. Lasers and quicksand. There's quicksand there, which Indy, of course, is like, it's not quicksand, it's dry sand. And I was like, that's actually kind of a funny beat. Then
Liked
Indy
it.
tells Ox to go get help. And I'm like, where do you you're in the middle of, where do you think he's going to go?
Yeah.
You're
He should've
40
come
feet
back
away
with a
from the place.
psychiatrist.
Yeah. No, I got this, guys. I'm medicated now. I'm good. Let's see. Mutt comes back with a python. Or excuse me, this is the part where Marion's like, hey, we're going to die, so I have to tell you something. Mutt is your son. His real name is not Mutt. It's Henry Jones Jr. the third, or Henry Jones the third. And Indy immediately asks her why she didn't make him finish school, which is a really funny line and done well. I think these two still have good chemistry even after all these years. Mutt comes back with a python, and Indy freaks out. He's like, he makes him call it a rope, just like I have to call Diet Coke water these days. When my wife asks, no, I'm drinking water. Ox
This
comes
whole
back.
scene to me is an example of this movie in a nutshell, because when it works, it's
Yep.
working really great. Like getting the back and forth between Marion and Indy. I'm like, okay, I like these characters. This is the Indy I love. And then there's just the weird stuff of like the quicksand line of him kind of going into teacher mode. It's funny as a concept, but it goes back to the library moment for me of like, he wouldn't act this way in this situation. Like Indy's way craftier than this, way more clever, like fun even. And to deal with the snake in the way he does is like,
I hate the way he does the snake, and I hate that that's the solution. And
No,
the snake
but like
would
he
tear in
shouldn't
half.
have to. He shouldn't have to react to a snake because it shouldn't be a part of the fucking sequence. It should
At all.
like it's so stupid. It's yet another one of the dumb things that just makes me dislike the movie because like, God, like you have so much to work with to make this movie serviceable and decent and above average, but you're making a lot of bad choices, and this whole snake fiasco is just so goddamn dumb.
See,
And, this scene to me is also a really good example of like Shia LaBeouf's by far not the worst part of this movie. And like, I'm not even talking
Oh,
about
not
him
at
as
all.
an actor. I'm talking about him as a character. It's like him being Indiana Jones' kid. Sure, fine. Like, it's not that offensive of a choice. It totally could have been like, oh, they didn't need to do this thing. But it's like, whatever, it's fine. But then when he does things like this, it's like, this isn't in service of the film. This is like to get a moment for
It's
people to be like,
slapsticky.
he really hates snakes, man, guys. Like, that's his
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
and
He's
that's
gonna
what I was
say
talking
the
to, right?
thing.
It's too much fanfare and not enough evolution for the characters. And I mean, all these criticisms super valid. I couldn't see any of this through the fact that they apparently borrowed the fucking set from like Saved by the Bell Goes to Hawaii. This thing looked straight out of a multicam fucking sitcom. Terrible. Anyway, let's see. Ox comes back with the only help he could probably find, and then I can't hold it against him because they're out in the middle of the fucking desert, of course, or the jungle. He comes back with the Russians. The Russians use a giant CG forest cutter to carve a path through the Amazon, while Marion tells Mutt about Indy being his real father, and he's like, no, my father was a pilot. And he's like, you married that dumb motherfucker? And she's like, well, you left me in the lurch. And he goes, well, I didn't know you were pregnant and all that stuff. We get some more backstory about why Indy and Marion broke up, and Indy tells Mutt he's like, you're going to go back and finish school. And Mutt's like, wait a minute, you thought it was totally fine before I was your kid. He's like, well, now you're my kid, and you can't be a fucking loser. Then
Yeah, you fucking loser.
then they kick Dovchenko to death and use Mutt's knife to cut himself free. And Indy cuts a hole in the truck canopy while Marion takes a moment to put their argument to rest. She says, I'm sure I wasn't the only one she's like, I'm sorry. I'm sure I wasn't the only one to go on with my life. There must have been plenty of women for you over the years. And he goes, there was a few, but they all had the same problem. And she says, what's that? And he looks back at her and says, they weren't you, honey. And he goes up the thing, and we get a little moment of musical flair. And it's the only
It's the
moment that I
fucking
got
theme.
feeling in this movie. I was like, yes. And then it cuts back to Marianne, and she's smiling, and I'm like, perfect. Now we got to cut up to the canopy, and it's the moment, right? We're kicking off nope, we stay on Marion, and then we see the guy fall out from Marion's perspective, and then they just get in the front seat. And I'm like, wow, what a missed opportunity.
Bing,
That
bang,
sucks.
boom.
Bing, bang, boom. Let's see. Indy shoots an RPG at the forest chopping machine, which blows it up. And I'm like, oh, I guess that set piece is done.
Holy shit. This is so crazy because in another Indiana Jones movie, like
He would have been
let's
on
think
that
about
fucking thing.
The mine carts, right? Like going through, I'm always talking about there's always the perfect amount. There's always one more coming back. This scene is the opposite of that because it's not the perfect amount. It's just more. He comes out, shoots this rocket. It hits the thing. Some CG blender
The saw
thing
blade,
comes flying at them, rolling through a bunch of cars, including theirs. The amount of times that their car gets like utterly freaking destroyed and they're totally fine, not in seatbelts or anything. I get that it's a movie, but it's like the Indiana Jones movies have set up some semblance of rules, some semblance
Stakes.
of things people can survive and not survive. And granted, they were goofy as hell, but like this is like just so much to the point that it is noise.
Well, you expect an escalation of action when it comes to these big action set pieces, right? And to me, when you introduce, like if we were in a video game and you started in a car, what would you think you'd have to do, right? You'd have to freaking pull a Shadow of the Colossus, and eventually it's going to end up on this thing, right? This is the tank from Last Crusade, right? We're going to have that fun action set piece where everyone's fighting the saw blades and he almost gets his face cut off. And obviously it's an homage to the propellers from all the other movies and things like that. No, they just blow it up. And then we get a car chase between three cars that are moving at 10 miles an hour. And it makes you feel as though if someone were to get kicked out of the car, they would just pop up and go about their day. Like there's no sense of danger whatsoever in this. And we keep going on. And it just, because honestly, I think what happened was someone was like, we just got to get him we got to get to the ant holes. How do we get him there? Just have him drive around for 20 minutes and knock each other's nuts on some plants. We'll be good to go.
That happens.
It does happen. Let's see. Thankfully, there's a box of fencing swords to keep Mutt busy because he's a fencer, guys. We know that because he talked about having gone to school and fenced. As Indy punches his way up the caravan, when he gets to Mac tells him, he's like, "You stupid son of a bitch. I'm CIA. I'm a double agent." And I, for one, believe him. I just believe this guy 100%. Mac and Spalko fence for no reason.
He's just so happy to see him every time, man.
It's true. I guess he only has one friend left because that's what happens when all the rest of your friends get married and have kids and move on, and you're still out there living that bachelor life. Tim, let that be a lesson to you. Spalko gets the.
I'm just so fucking sick of the Mac at this point. Like, I don't need Mac to be in this movie.
Why is he
anymore.
in this fucking movie? Why is he
He's
in the
in it
movie?
a lot.
He just
quite
keeps
a lot.
on. It's like they thought they needed to add an extra point of contention, and I just don't need it, man. This dude sucks, and then he pops up at the end again to kind of triple cross. It wasn't a triple cross; it was actually just.
I lied about the double cross.
Like it's so pointless. All that.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't remember where he ends up because there's the shot
He got
where he like
sucked away.
He gets sucked into the void.
Yeah,
in
but
the
he's-
slowest fucking
he's
thing of all
bad
time.
again. Like he does
Yeah,
the
he does
flip
the
of like
triple-
he's been leading them
Triple cross
to-
that wasn't a triple cross.
Yeah.
Exactly, that whole thing. But then Indy's like still trying to save him, and I'm like, I get it. It's like, oh, Indy's a good guy, but I'm like, also no,
Just run out of the room.
just fucking
Yeah.
leave him.
And also,
He's an
Mac,
asshole.
he just falls down at one point and lays on the ground. Like, he has like a minute and a half to pick himself up and come up the stairs, but
And
he doesn't.
Indy's like,
he
"Oh,
lays
yeah,
there
yeah."
until he gets the whip, and he goes, "Just let me go, Indy. This is this." and you're
No,
like,
just
"Okay."
get up.
Let's
No,
him go.
thanks,
He goes,
Greg, I'll just get
"Ah!"
up.
He screams like, "What the fuck do you want?" Like, I don't understand
Yeah.
what the hell you're
He said
doing.
something sentimental towards the end, and even with that, I was like, "Why are they doing this?" He just triple crossed us. I'm not going to believe that there's any sort of feeling between these two characters that can be resolved. Just let him go.
Yeah,
Totally
yet again
agree.
at the end, this is another time where Spielberg or whoever was out for a week came back and was like, "No, but he has to rescue Mac again. He's gonna try to rescue Mac." Like, why? Well, it's because like they double cross it. Like, we don't have to have any of that stuff. Actually,
Yeah,
like that doesn't
totally.
that
Like,
doesn't
just
have
let
to
him
be
die.
like if you're having trouble figuring out what to do with Mac, you don't have to have him in the movie past the
At all.
first sort of turn. Like,
Yeah.
why do we keep on trying to save and salvage this relationship? It's stupid.
Yeah, Matt could have died before they went to Peru. He also could have died in the giant anthill we're about to get up to, along with Mutt, who swings there with the monkeys. That is a thing that they put in this movie. You want to talk about
last
Steven
week-
Spielberg must have been gone for a fucking month when this scene got conceived and shot.
Last week, Nick, you were like, Tim, okay, the first movie had the snakes, second movie, it had the bugs, third movie, it had the rats. You're like, you'll never guess what's in the next movie. And when I saw the first monkey, I was like, oh no, is it about to be fucking monkeys? And then there was a fuck ton of monkeys, and I was like, this could get crazy. And then it's like, no, they're just homies with Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
That
They have
was
the
the
same
choice.
haircut.
He's swinging through the trees, dude.
It like turns into George of the Jungle for like a good 2
It's
minutes.
fucking crazy. I know. And then he meets up with them. He cuts them off.
Perfectly slides through the car. It's like,
But
what?
like, did they not have a Tim Gettys there to be like, guys, this sucks. Like, you can't do this. Like, who do they really have? No one around them? Is George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, are they just in their little cocoon of billionaires that they didn't have a single solid PA who was like, you can't put that in this. People are going to laugh at it. This is bad.
I need Indiana Jones to just sit down with his newly discovered son, and just be like, can you explain the monkey thing to me? Like, how'd you catch up to us? It makes no sense at all.
It's like
wild.
a scene out of context of like Greaser, Shia LaBeouf swinging in the jungle with monkeys. It's hilarious.
I would love for a post-credit sequence where they're back at that same cafe and he's like, can you talk to monkeys?
Pineapple Express style.
Yeah. Man, I got shot. It's crazy. Oh, man. Anyway, let's see. They get to the ant hill, which is ridiculous. Ox uses the skull to control the ants while Indy fights Dovchenko, and it's boring until Indy knocks him into the ant pile, and then it becomes incredibly gruesome as they drag him into the hole, eating him alive. Blessing from Kind of Funny.
Was there any sort of like hint that you can use the skull to control shit like that?
They
maybe something
talk
cool.
about mind control.
Okay.
That's what it's for. They're trying to
special
figure
object,
out how to use it to control minds, and so Ox has sort of figured that out. But so that I kind of buy because he's already been controlled, so he's a little bit more communicative with it, or you can utilize it. He's just thinking like 3-dimensionally, and we're only thinking 2-dimensionally. So
And I guess like the alien spoke to him, and so I don't doubt that maybe from that he gained some sort of knowledge of the skull and how to use it.
Bunch
I'll
of
buy it.
ants. Ants can get controlled, but not scorpions. Bring that
Possible.
back.
Let's see.
But,
Then
dude,
for,
but then when I saw the ants, I was like, oh, okay, here's where we're starting to party.
Yeah,
like these
these
ants are going to
ants.
be the actual threat. And obviously, these look like shit. The CG was horrible. There was not a
Squish it.
single scene that this worked visually. But it was fucking dope seeing these people get devoured. And I was like, okay, I'm actually a little bit scared of this situation because those
When
ants,
they start
they can fuck
climbing,
you up.
When they start climbing on themselves to form that little tower, I was like, oh my God, like you're
shit.
not safe anywhere. These guys are crazy.
It was like World War Z, but like they're a lot smaller.
yeah. This
And more
sequence
fierce.
worked phenomenally for me. I'll tell you why, because I watched it on this monitor from my bed back there.
Yeah,
I
makes
just
sense.
laid down and watched it. All the CG looked flawless to me.
hey, if you thought the effects in this looked good, you should go back and watch the 2001 amazing movie The Mummy, because they had basically the exact same effects in it.
Yeah, last week I told you guys there was 2,000 rats in the scene. This week there was 0 ants actually in this.
Oh,
Wow.
Hard to believe.
This
Hard
is
to
the only
believe.
scene I remember from watching it in theaters. And
Wow.
even though I remember even at the time, I think the CG didn't look great, but just like that one part where they fucking like go over that one dude and he's being eaten alive was fucking gnarly.
Then all the ants disappear, and for no reason, the Russians run away from Indiana Jones and the other people, even though they have superior numbers and superior firepower. They decide we got to get off this cliff and get away from this whole situation. So Marion decides to do the exact same thing, only she blasts her car off the cliff, landing safely in the tree below, and does that look like
the
I knew that.
cartoon, like, ooh.
I'm like, what was the plan?
Yo, this was horrible.
It's horrible.
They should have just fucking drove off the cliff and landed in the water.
In the
That
water.
would have been more believable. Not believable, but more believable than what we got.
But also, but we didn't see. It's like when you look at how the scene was shot, that would have made sense if they had to do that. But the ants were receding. It's not like we had an ocean of ants.
Receded.
Exactly, right? We didn't have an ocean of ants coming toward them to the point where they had no other choice. Like when Indy in Temple of Doom, when they go off the fucking snowy ledge and hit the water down below, they didn't have a choice. They couldn't stop, right? This, they could have just stopped and reassessed their situation for a second. I don't know why any of this
But don't
stuff
they have
happened.
the Russians chasing them here?
No, the Russians are rappelling down the fucking the cliff for no reason. I don't know why. They're like,
Well, they're coming after them, right?
no, the way it's look, they start repelling first, and then Marion shoots the car off, and they literally lock
they
eyes
don't
with
know that. Then
Splenko.
they're just trying to get away from the ants. They don't understand the ants.
I think they're trying to
University,
get
But
right?
again,
With
the ants don't look to be that big of an imminent threat because they've
The
started
ant-
to recede into
Yeah.
their anthills.
The ants double agent CIA.
Oh,
Wow. I legit had to
shit.
rewind this scene because I thought I missed something. You know, like when Marion looks over at Indy, when Indy's like, "Don't do that again," and Marion like gives the smile, like, "I did that shit." I was
Right.
like, "Did she do that shit?" And I
What did
rewound
she
it, and I
do?
was like, "No, you just drove off a cliff and just risked it all." And yeah, no, that
You
was
hit a
weird.
goddamn
I didn't like
tree.
it.
It's very weird. I know, again, I could be wrong. I think the idea, Greg, was that the ants were supposed to be still coming for them. But when you look at how it's shot, I just didn't. You don't get the feeling that these things are like an impending death coming at them, and they have to make these harsh decisions. Let's see where we
But
at.
they couldn't have done that. They couldn't have had the car just go off the cliff and land in the water because they had to immediately follow it up with them going down three waterfalls. They got bigger and bigger every time. And
Yeah.
I gotta say, not
was
mad
excessive.
at it. Not mad at it. I
You know
love
why you're
this
not mad
shit.
at it, Tim? Because it gave you Mad
Oh,
Fast
yeah.
and Furious 7 vibes.
Which this movie shouldn't do. This movie should not be doing that. And it's so out of place.
I'll
I
say
had, to,
this.
I had to rewind the waterfall thing also because I thought my playback was fucking up and it was replaying the same thing over and over again. And so when I rewound it again, he was like, "No, 3," and I was like, "Oh, I get it. They're doing the same scene 3 times." Movie's fucking terrible.
What
You know
else
what's
were
really
you
dumb?
doing during this movie? Were you on email? Were you on Instagram?
I was playing Switch. I was like,
Gotcha,
you know what,
there
man?
it
I
is.
can't,
Alright,
I
yeah.
can't just focus on this thing anymore.
Wait, are they
It's-
still in the waterfall? I felt something's wrong.
Andy, what's up?
I just hated that Marion still had the steering wheel in her hand. Makes no sense at all. Like it's not like she flew out with everybody else. Like everybody kind of just dispersed on that final waterfall. There's no way she would have just brought
Everything
it
you're
with-
saying is true, Andy, but it makes me smile because it reminds me of when Stewie's on the pep pills and crashes the car and it's still just jerking the wheels sitting in the cab of the truck.
Anyway, they all survive and they make it to shore. The whole time, Ox keeps spouting out riddles and stuff, and none of it makes any sense or has any real impact on you emotionally because this movie seems like paint by numbers at this point. Indy heads into a big rock face that looks like one of the skulls because the aliens told him to return the skull, and he tells them, we should have seen that again, but they just told him. So he tells us more stuff about the lost city of sun worshippers who really worship the aliens, and it's revealed there were 13 aliens who came to visit and be worshipped and follow. Let's see what else. I kind of wish it was revealed at this point that they were aliens, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Cool scene where the protectors of the city come out of the walls in the ceiling. I love the visuals here where they're just kind of like literally embedded into the environment and they come out and it's scary as shit. Thankfully, it's not too scary to him because they chase them into a completely computer generated valley that just looks so fake and so bloomy that I want to swallow this USB.
Oh my god.
Do it.
Do it.
Oh,
Do
don't
it.
Do it, coward.
Oh no.
You gotta,
Greg, it's gonna
you
take
want
2
to know
days to come out.
everything. That's the only way to get the knowledge.
It's true. Let's see. They corner. Let's see. They corner everyone, and Ox uses again the skull to control them and ward them off. Guess what? Mac dropped a giant tracking device for Spalko, and her team will follow.
Mac
No.
dropped
We
a
don't see the
giant
second one
piece of
until a little
shit.
bit later. And I start thinking to myself, Greg, where was he hiding these tracking
Yeah,
devices?
I know, right? He's just stop his.
Hold on, guys. I got to shit again. Man, you've shit 3 times already. I know. It's the only way they can find us.
Also, they shouldn't be beeping. Like, come on, they shouldn't
Yeah.
be like. You're doing the beeping so we know that they're tracking devices, but then they would have heard them on Mac, you know.
Meanwhile, the gang makes their way up to the top of the temple, and Indy figures out that Ox couldn't find his way in originally, so he must have taken the skull back to the grave. That's the reason, Blessing. That's the reason why the skull was taken back to the grave. Not hold on to it, not hang out there and try to figure out the riddle or call your boy. Take it back to the grave. Then he just keeps throwing out lines of exposition, explain stuff that Ox figured out, and it's bafflingly lazy writing. They find the way into the temple, which is really dangerous, and they make their way all the way down to the final level. Outside, the Russians have murdered all the temple guards, and Spalko finds another tracker pooped out by Mac. I'm assuming he hid them. We already talked about that. Indy and the team find a massive treasure trove of items all throughout time. The aliens, as it turns out, Tim, were archaeologists, just like us. They use the skull to open a secret entrance into a final chamber where all of the 13 aliens are sitting in their crystal form. All of them are full except for one, which is missing its head. Ox goes to put the head back on, but Mac stops him again at gunpoint. He's like, I lied about being a double agent, governor. I'm just a single agent. And Indy, when are you going to stop trusting people? Spalco comes in and takes that skull out of Ox's hand. She's like, I want an Oompa Loompa now, Daddy. I'm going to be the one that gets all of this information.
Give me the knowledge.
Give me the knowledge now. She puts the skull back on its body and it fires up. It uses Ox
Moves
to
all
communicate.
around, sits down.
Ox, of course, starts talking clearly because the alien is communicating through him. Spalco says, I want to know everything you know. Fire up the interdimensional spaceship. Let's go. Ox gets his sanity back immediately and tells them this place is a portal to another dimension. So Indy and his team are like, that sounds fucking horrible. Let's bang out of here. And they dive through a little hole as everything starts to spool up. But Spalco's like, no, I'm going to stay behind because I still think some good can come of this.
They're going to give me all the knowledge.
Exactly. Indy tries to get Mac to stop looting the place, but then Mac just lays down on the ground for a while.
So
and then
terrible.
And then Indy throws whip to him.
like,
He's like,
when
take
they're
my whip.
filming this,
Indy.
it's got to be in. They're filming it in one shot. Mac twists the ankle, goes down early, and then it's now computer generated. We're gonna start taking the floor away from you really quickly. All right, great, thank you. And instead, in the shot, they use 2 scenes of him falling down. So he's just laying on the ground.
No,
then they
but
toss the rope to him with it even not even falling apart yet.
He tosses the rope to him, and Matt catches it, still on the ground. And then they talk. And he's like, Indy, you gotta let me go, Governor. I've double-crossed you for the last time. Still on the ground. And then he starts floating up in the air and gets sucked away. I'm like, you should have tossed the whip at him as he's being pulled away and he grabs it. That's how you create tension, Steven Spielberg. I went to UC Irvine fucking film studies school. Listen to me next time. Hire me. I'll be the PA that goes out and gets the dirt for the gopher hole. Thank you, Andy. I'll be the fucking person that tells you, that pulls you aside and goes, are you fucking kidding me with swinging with the monkeys? Just
ask for at least $100.
Cut the scene.
Dirt, you know? That's for
Barry, I'm going to get $200. We're going to split it and get coffee afterwards.
Don't have him at all in the movie. Like, get him out way earlier so we don't have to worry about this shit. But, like, you expect us to care about this character as if he kind of does right by them at the end, right?
Yeah, no.
Like, as if, like, maybe he regrets the double crossing and then ends up saving them, and then now Indy's trying to save him. He's like, "Nah, let me go, man. Like I've made my mistakes. It's time. Like it's time for me to go." But we're letting go of a dude who doesn't feel bad at all for what he did, and multiple people died because of him. You know,
I'm watching it again right now. He is laying on the ground for so long,
in a wide shot.
Then just. Well, use your legs, Mac. I can't do it alone. He just lays there. He gives nothing. He doesn't move. Jonesy, I'm going to be all right. And then he gets sucked up and screams like a fucking bitch on his way out. Like, why'd you say you're going to be all right? Why didn't you get up? I gave you all these options.
Hey, man.
You laid there like a fucking slug.
I'm going to the next dimension, Greg. They got pizza over there. We're going to be all right.
Pizza out there. Why are you screaming at the last second?
This whole bit is why, to me, the bad guys in this are easily the worst. Because not only him double, triple, like any crossing, like who cares? It's not interesting. And like the way that it ends is just truly bizarre. But even like her, the main bad guy, it's like, what's she even doing? It's like
she's power, man.
That's the real
knowledge was also her treasure,
She's getting the knowledge, but then now where is she? Like, it's just
that's what she wanted. She won. When you think about it, you know, she got what she wanted.
Exactly, which is stupid. Like that was a dumb thing to want.
It's one of those things. Going back to Andy's earlier point from Mac, like the way they did it in Crystal Skull was better, right? We get moments with Snyder where you actually see her breaking down, and I'm sorry, not Crystal Skull, Last Crusade, pardon me, where you see her during the burning of the books, realizing that this Nazi party is out of control, and it's pre-World War II, so she doesn't quite realize the full breadth of their fucking evilness. And then by the end, she ends up, you kind of feel like, okay, that's earned, right? She gives the guy the wrong chalice and is like, Indy, I've been wrong the whole time. I'm sorry. Please forgive me, even though lots of people have died from this. And then, of course, she has to die because she's done things that are just too far gone. In this, that character is super stupid. Where are we? Oh, okay, so everyone gets sucked into the inner dimension. Spalco gets sucked into the inner dimension as well. Before that happens, he's like, "Wow, they were aliens." And then he's like, "Actually, point of clarification, they're interdimensional beings." And I'd be like, "Ox, shut the fuck up, bro. Just shut up, bro."
Like, now's not the time, bro.
Also, I just want to point out here that one of the criticisms of Raiders of the Lost Ark that we joked about when we watched it was that Indiana Jones didn't need to be in that movie. He doesn't really do anything that that moves the plot along or it kills the bad guys at the end. And it's the exact same in this one.
Yeah.
If he had just told them where it was, she would have gone there. All of them would have died, and then the thing with the ship would have left.
This would have fucking happened. That's what I'm saying. It's like, what the hell was the point of this?
Zero. There is 0 point, and that is exactly what happened. She gets sucked up into the thing. The interdimensional beings go, even though they fly. Fucking interdimensional beings has to still fly in a flying saucer for some reason because that's what aliens look like, even though they're not aliens, they're interdimensional beings. Where did they go? He says to Ox as the thing takes off. He goes, "Did they go back into space?" And he goes, "Not into space, into the space between spaces." And I'd be like, "This is that even gonna tell me if I throw this motherfucker off that cliff into that gorge?" And they'd be like, "No, I just hurl his ass." Done. Then Indy calls Mutt Henry Jones Jr. He's like, "Whatever, Junior. Where are you gonna go, Junior?" And then Mutt throws it back in his face, and he's like, "Hey, I'll tell you where I didn't go. Why didn't you stick around when I was a kid?" And then the scene ends.
And he goes,
Wait,
And then
what kind
Indy
of question is that though? Like, why didn't you stick around? Like, he didn't know you existed, dude.
Yeah.
What?
It's really, really dour. And then Indy gets promoted to associate dean. I guess he gets his job back, even though he hasn't at all interacted with the FBI. And when he gets back to the States, Greg, how are you going to explain this away? Lots of people died. We killed a lot of indigenous people. So a lot of Peruvians are just dead, and we can't explain that. And also, we lost your skull, and we lost that thing. But I guess I'm okay, FBI, right? We cool?
we're cool.
Cool.
All right.
I'm not a traitor to the country. Don't worry.
No, not at all. Now he's getting married to Marion, and they seal the
lighting.
That's
Oh,
great.
shit.
They seal the deal with a kiss, and Mutt grabs the camera to take a picture of them as they walk down the aisle. As he does so, the wind of adventure blows the door outside, causing Indy's hat to blow over to him at his feet. He brings it up to put it on his head, but
music
inches away
starts.
from it. Indy snatches it out of his hand, and he goes, "No thanks, Shia LaBeouf. You simply don't have the stuff." And then the theme plays, and hopefully COVID has killed the fifth movie.
Definitely has not killed it. It is
7
coming
syllables
July
in the
29th,
name.
2020, with James Mangold potentially
2020.
directed.
2021.
Actually,
2022.
I'll dial that back. That does sound awesome, and I hope they make another movie because it employs 3,000 people every time they make one of these fucking things. So that's really good.
James Mangold, fucking good at his job.
And James Mangold's a bad motherfucker too.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Is the next?
You can go to
movie have-
patreon.com/kindafunny to write your haiku reviews, just like, of course, Miscellaneous did, always doing the plot in haiku form. Flashback, Indy Steel. Nope, this is Last Crusade. Sorry about that. Moving on down a little bit. New Russian hottie. Hey, look, there are no Nazis. What will use? Got me. Wow, nothing greater. How do you escape that crater?
A
Refrigerator.
refrigerator. Fucking great. Great.
Wow, nothing greater. Or no, already said that. Jungle fights on cars. Least favorite scene by far. Mutt, like ape, swings far. They offer a big gift. Interdimensional rift. Russian demise. Swift. And they're like, this is a bonus here. Try not to do so many, but here's an extra I wrote week 1 that I haven't been able to use. Must respect the drip. Indy with his hat and whip hanging from his hip. Miscellaneous, you got a gift. You got a damn gift.
You should
with
write
these
Hallmark
haikus,
cards.
Be a rapper.
man. Mr. Hollywood says, God, this movie sucks. Why does Shia keep crying? Aliens? Really? And Ignacio Rojas says, why'd they do this? How's this Indiana Jones? Spielberg, what happened?
What happened?
What happened, Steven?
Hit me with some of that. Ragu
Bagu.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Right Guys Talk About Guys, the podcast within a podcast where we rank and review the villains of the Indiana Jones cinematic universe. Right now, at number 1, we have the Thuggy Cult. In number 2, we have Totten Bellick from Indiana Jones 1. In number 3, we have more Nazis and the Nazi sympathizer from the other Indiana Jones. Where do we want to put these guys? Dead last? Great.
Dead last.
Man,
I will
Dead
say,
last.
when I first saw the monkey, I was like, oh shit. Is this like the friend of the monkey from the
Yeah,
first one?
man.
But
You
it's like
fucking killed
he's
my
learned
friend,
learned from the problems.
Yeah,
now
he's
the good
learned from
monkeys.
his mistakes. He's done being a Nazi sympathizer.
I'm a changed man.
Yeah,
I'm a
we'll
changed
never
man.
know the
Shia.
sins of the past.
I believe in
Yeah.
communism now.
Does anyone have an argument that they're not dead last?
No, they're dead last. Remember how cool Kate Blanchett was in Thor Ragnarok? I want to watch that movie again. I mean, we can rank that. It's got to be number 4, right? Where are we
Yeah,
at?
it's time,
done.
to,
We're
time to
over.
rank them.
There's
Number
no
1,
fucking
The
way.
Last Crusade. Number 2 is Raiders of the Lost Ark. Number 3 is Temple of Doom. And I imagine number 4 is Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Does anyone here have an argument against that? And there you have it. We will return one day with Indiana Jones in review. But like I said, next week we are starting Pixar in review with Bug's Life, continuing off where Toy Story left off. And then we're going to do WandaVision to get back to that MCU dream, baby. But until then,
Part time.